whether it's a video or podcast on your favorite platform, please like and subscribe to us so that you can get notification of when a new show is released. You can also find us on major social media platforms. If you go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com, you can find links to the videos or MP3 files, which you can download and enjoy without commercial interruptions. If you're into classic horror, ghost, and adventure stories, I narrate Nightshade Diary, and you can find links at nightshadediary.com. If scary stories are your bag, and listening to encounters with cryptids, ghosts, dogman, and other weird creatures sends a shiver up your spine, then go to supernaturalstorytime.com for links to our weekly podcasts. Noteworthy news about the paranormal world, true crime, conspiracy stories, and anything that is just plain weird can be found at eerie.news or visit the Stranger Than Fiction Stories tab at miamighostchronicles.com. Please subscribe to my newsletter on SUBSTACK. Just go to mppellicer.com for a link. I want to thank you for being part of my audience, and I think you are all wonderful. So how's everybody doing? Good, I hope. Well, everything is good over here. Yes. I know the show's a little bit staggered, but we're coming like to the last 2 weeks of the year. Christmas, New Year's, holiday, you name it. So, yeah, everybody. It's really funny because I tell everybody, everything goes on is like whether you're trying to get something accomplished, whether it's a government office or it's like after the New Year's, like everybody is like doing their thing. Even if they're at work, they're not really at work. So yeah, you got to be patient, that kind of deal. Plus, yeah, but it's good, I can't believe it. 25 years into the 21st century. Yep, here we go. I was looking up, the stories, and no matter where I go, there's a UFO story. I can't get away from them, So I'm gonna this time, and they're interesting. They're interesting because these stories that I looked up. Remember, we always tend to think sometimes when you say UFO as in extraterrestrial origin, but we had that thing with the drone. So now people are thinking, okay, and which is what we should be, which is UFO doesn't necessarily mean off planet or whatever. So this, I'm telling you, it's interesting because now I think that concept is getting to people about what if this is not ET? How's that? All right. This first story is out of Cowboy State Daily. All right. And let me see if I can get myself in here a little bit bigger. All right. Here we go. And this is titled here. Mystery drones or maybe UFOs over Sweetwater County are not the new normal. All right. They have this, by the way, this is a week old, 15. Yeah, a week old. This is a recent article that came out. Strange flying objects over Sweetwater County's Red Desert and Jim Bridges power plant are so common now they're the new normal. The sheriff's office says, but no one is giving any answers about what they are. Remember New Jersey? Strange flying objects are still congregating high over Sweetwater County's Red Desert and Jim Bridges power plant. This is according to the sheriff, by the way. County Sheriff John Grossnickel saw the drone-like flying objects with his own eyes as recently as Saturday night. Blah, blah. This marks 13 months of lighted drone-like objects congregating, often in coordinated formations over the Red Desert and power plant, Mower said, adding that they are too high to shoot down from the ground level. And you know what? This is really interesting because remember, when this was going on, everybody was thinking of New Jersey. 13 months, I never heard of anything going on in Wyoming, over in the desert, or of all things, a power plant. Here we go. We've worked with everybody, he said. We've done everything we can to figure out what they are. Nobody wants to give us any answers. Moore said the sheriff took Wyoming U.S. House Rep Harriet Hagman out to see the objects, and she watched them. Hagman's office did not respond to an email request for confirmation and comment by publication. The phenomena are so pervasive and any hope of addressing them so remote that people have stopped reporting them to the sheriff's office. He uses the term drone and unidentified flying object interchangeably, noting that the objects are thousands of feet above the earth,
They move like drones, but are fundamentally still a mystery. The objects haven't done any harm to date, he added. It's like this phenomena that continues to happen, but it's not causing you, issues that we have to deal with, other than the presence of them. If the objects pose an imminent harm at some point, rest assured we'll certainly act accordingly. Okay. And they're saying here that State Senate Appropriations Chair Tim Salazar asked the leader of the Wyoming National Guard about the UAPs or unidentified anomalous phenomena during the agency's discussion of its non-existent drone combat budget, which means we're on our own, folks. UAP is a new government acronym for UFO. Wyoming Adjutant General Greg Porter said he didn't think he could discuss that in open testimony. See, that doesn't sound like that's nothing there, nothing to worry about. Okay, during the drone talk, Porter said the Guard doesn't have and isn't asking for drone interdiction equipment in its budget right now. Though the state passed a law this year allowing the governor to deploy the Guard against drones over critical infrastructure. Anything the Wyoming National Guard may require now would likely be obsolete in 12 to 14 months. That's a first. Ross Nichols' office was among the most outspoken of the issue of mystery drones this past winter, but the southwestern Wyoming sheriff wasn't alone. Niobrara County Sheriff Randy Starkey said he and others in his community watched mystery drones flying over the Lions Creek area all last winter from late October through early March. Wow. Okay. Again, like the other sheriff, he received no answers on their origin. 6 more sheriffs told Cowboy State Daily that they'd either seen potential mystery drones or had reports of them in their counties. All right, some of them hadn't had sightings since about January. Starkey was the first Wyoming sheriff to make headlines last December about his county's strange flying objects manifestations. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. This other article follows up. It's the same thing as by Cowboy State Daily, and this was titled "Lawmakers Question Wyoming Adjutant General Over Presence of UFOs." This is what they were. This was an appropriations hearing. All right, and they're being asked, what are we going to do? And they're saying, well, what if we get something now? It'll be obsolete, I guess. Halfway through a Wyoming Legislative Committee 4-week budget planning marathon Friday, a top lawmaker asked the state's adjutant general about the prevalence of unidentified flying objects overhead, which the government now calls unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. I'm sorry, your UFOs in my head are UFOs. I'm asking if you've had any instance of UAP over your airspace. That's Senate Appropriations Chair Tim Salazar. Blah, blah, blah. Okay. All right. Salazar said he asked the question because news of UAPs frequenting U.S. military installations has become more of a concern following national media reports. You think? Blah. Okay. Same thing, mystery. They're asking them. And citing concerns about conflicts with federal agencies and laws, Gordon vetoed the bill and asked it reach his desk. Okay, so what did they Okay, Salazar's question came during Porter's presentation about a bill passed this year that gives the governor the authority to call in the National Guard if drones encroach upon critical infrastructure. That followed weeks of mystery drone or flying object sightings in New Jersey and in Wyoming. So in other words, Gordon, which was or is the governor, he vetoed it, but the legislature overrode and enacted the law as far as, I guess, getting the National Guard. Again, and the same thing, the Guard doesn't have drone interdiction technology currently. Okay, well, bottom line, everybody's glad they're gone. Okay, but at the same time, I don't know, it's almost like mixed messages. We don't know what they are. They look like drones, UAPs. They just made a law that allows the National Guard to do something if the drones or whatever they are do something. But at the same time, they're not equipped to handle it because they're saying whatever we get now, maybe in a year or a little bit over a year, whatever it is, whatever we have will be obsolete. I mean, I don't live in Wyoming, but I'd be worried if I had stuff like that flying around, whether it's my house or the desert or over a military installation or a nuclear plant. I'd be like, what is that? Oh, you mean they didn't do anything until the one day they do? I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little bit paranoid. What do you think? What do you think? Because to be honest, I don't remember ever getting a good explanation of what these drones are or what their origin is or what they were doing around flying around so many times. It's the same thing. You know about the cattle mutilations for the, UFOs? How many times you have to mutilate a cattle or dissect it? If that's, if we go with the story of that, this is the ETs doing this. How many times? This is not that mysterious of a creature. It's finite. It's like, again, no satisfactory answer. What do you think? Is it better to over worry or be prepared? How's that? Or just say, lay back and go, no, hopefully they'll come back or they won't come back and we'll figure it out. Peace, hope we get along. Hope a lot. So anyway, let's get on to the good part. The good part is, who is the guest today at Stories of the Supernatural? This is her first time here. Her name is Amy Marohn, and she's into hypnosis. And over a decade ago, she became very sick from a mysterious condition of unknown origin, and it took her 5 years to get a diagnosis. And by that point, she'd missed the optimal window of time where she could have used mainstream intervention as far as reversing her illness. She had a near-death experience, or an NDE, and it inspired her to live more intentionally while simultaneously opening spiritual pathways to higher frequency realms. The concept of hypnosis came through to her rather from her, and with every passing season, she opened her practice, and she uses enhanced energies and techniques continue to reveal themselves. From what she's saying, she's experienced firsthand the efficacy of interventions, and she used them to restore her body to a state of physical quietude. And with that, she's been able to help others. She has a 25-year history in the field of rehabilitation, and which served as a foundation and training ground for discovering her true calling, which of course is much more intuitive and mystically driven. She's a light worker. She works with entrepreneurs and business leaders to release unproductive patterns and recalibrate to the frequency of the authentic self. All right. And help me welcome her. How are you doing today, Amy? Oh, let me unmute you.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Here I am. Oh, thank you so much for the introduction.
No, on the contrary, it's my pleasure. I want to say this because I was a hypnotist. Sometimes hypnosis gets a raw deal. Sometimes people think that's like mind control, and it's not. They don't understand. I don't think they understand really how that the relaxation aspect of it and how much it can help with behavior. So let me ask you. So in other words, originally you were not a hypnotist,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. And how did you stumble across hypnosis as far as using it for yourself?
Yes. Well, it has everything to do with my near-death experience.
Okay.
Marlene, during that 5-year time period, I had this near-death experience where my soul left my body, and I crossed a threshold, and my experience was clairaudient and clairsentient. And how I explain that is I actually heard a voice. It's more like via mental telepathy, right? An idea is relayed to me, and in the form of a question. And the question was, Amy, are you ready to leave the earth plane? And yeah. And you may have heard similar stories,
right? Yes.
In these near-death experiences. It seems like a crazy radical idea that a person would actually have a choice of whether to stay and go. And maybe some do and some don't, but certainly in my case, I was given that choice. Are you ready to leave?
Okay.
What came to follow was clairsentient. What I mean by that is I was downloaded the cumulative emotional impact that my early departure from the earth plane would have on my son, right? Who
Yes.
was very young at that
Mm-hmm.
time. And this was well over a decade ago. And in that moment, I decided, even though my physical body was experiencing a lot of pain, I knew in that moment, I can't leave. My job isn't done. And so my
Right.
soul was absorbed back into my body. And, you know, I believe what I experienced not only was a near death experience, but some sort of soul upgrade, because it literally blew open my spiritual pathways. And this voice has stayed with me throughout the years. In fact, in the weeks to follow, the voice came through again and said, "You're going back to school." That
Okay.
was a crazy idea. I knew it didn't come from me. Again, it was coming through me because, number one, my near death experience was not a spontaneous healing. Number
Mm.
two, I had never imagined that I would go back to school. I had left corporate America at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I was too sick to hold down a job. I had finally, we had a diagnosis. I went through 10 months of flying to Michigan from Seattle, and I failed this Harvard educated doctor's medical protocol.
Right.
And so at the point of my near death experience, Marlene, my record for staying awake was
Mm-hmm.
about 2 hours at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was really that sick. I had dysautonomia, where my
Mm-hmm.
autonomic nervous system was going haywire. It impacted my heart and my blood pressure. I had violent spouts of vertigo, low grade fevers. I was, my autoimmune system was a mess.
Okay.
Seemed to be antibiotic resistant. So I would, I had this experience. I knew something profound had happened. I kept it very, very quiet. The experience that I had. And then, a few days later, I get this voice again that says, "You're going back to school." That seemed crazy. And I couldn't imagine what I would go back to school for at this
Okay.
point, because I was in my late 40s or my mid 40s at that point. A couple days later, that same voice came back and said, "You're going back to school to be a hypnotist."
Okay.
Then I knew something really
Because
profound.
you're like, that's not what I thought I would be going back to school for, right?
Absolutely. Never met a hypnotist, never saw a hypnotist, never even Googled it, in a random search out of curiosity. It was nowhere on my radar screen. So, but the wild thing is, Marlene, I didn't even question it. I ended up, I'll give you the truncated version. Back in school, weird conversation with the instructor. I'm very sick. I don't even know if I can stay awake for the duration of this training.
Okay. Wow.
But I somehow got through, and it was February of 2016, and that I finished this certification program. And then I opened my doors, so to speak, February 2016. I put up
Okay.
a website. I had no infrastructure built. I somehow trusted that this
Right.
voice was much more intelligent and intuitive than I was.
Okay.
And I had nothing to lose.
Right. Right.
I had spent down all of my savings and all of my money on medical care that wasn't covered by insurance. Again, I
Right.
left my six-figure corporate job. I mean, I had nothing to lose. And I had a
Right.
fairly new house, just navigated a divorce. My elderly mom moved out here to live with me
Okay.
before all of this storm erupted. And I had nothing to lose. And what I discovered through this was, hypnosis was just the platform to
Mm-hmm.
all of these other incredible energies that began to move through me in the term or in the form of, spiritual wisdom that would help direct my sessions with my clients, and spiritual energies, currents of energies that would move through me, me as a conduit to help my clients. I say ignite their inner healer. And there's so much more paranormal things that happened in the years to follow, but I'll pause now because I just shared a lot of information.
No, well, you know what? I'm glad you mentioned what you were saying, that you went ahead basically on faith and you opened this and the thing of, because you know how sometimes people wait for the perfect moment,
Yeah.
Everything is I gotta have enough money and everything's gotta be perfect. And then
Right.
I'll go ahead and I'll do what you did, is
Oh,
what I'm saying.
completely.
And you are like, okay, you know what? Talk about the like, jump off the cliff kind of deal, like execute. You got to execute. And I think
Completely.
people get caught up in waiting for that perfect moment where the risk is minimal. And
Yep.
sometimes, like what you said, what have I got to lose? In other words, let's do it.
Exactly.
And that's
That's
I think for a lot of people that never, for lack of a better word, pull the trigger on things, that they just research it and they talk about it and they plan it and they go, it'll be great, but they never go and do it.
Sure.
Even with no
It's
guarantees,
true.
because everybody wants a guarantee. Like, what you mean? I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
crash and burn on this? Is like, hopefully not. But, and a lot of people, I think that when they reach old age, they'll go, man, why didn't I do that?
Yeah,
like,
completely.
what's the worst that could have happened? But I'm glad you pointed that out, because you were in a situation where maybe some other person would have said, "Are you crazy? What are you doing?"
Yeah,
Ah, man.
completely. Even including my family.
Oh,
My
I bet,
mom's
right?
like, that sounds like a nice hobby, right? My mother was a teacher.
Yeah,
for
like that. That's a nice hobby.
How are you going to pull this off, right?
Yes.
And
that's
I've had other people ask me, Amy, do you think you would have chosen this path had you not had this spiritual awakening? Which, Marlene, I want to point out, right? Spiritual awakenings come in many forms. In the form of a divorce, in the form of chronic illness, in the form of you're working for a company that downsizes and you find yourself out of a job, or closing a chapter on a 35-year career. I was always, even as a rehabilitation counselor, I was in the helping healing world, but it wasn't spiritual. It was very case management oriented. It was very practical. It was very mainstream. There was very little opportunity to dip in.
Because I'm thinking that this is what they expected from you, as with the job that you were doing. Well, we don't want you to talk about spirituality. You're here to do this. Like, don't, I can see totally where that would have been like, maybe even for you, it'd be like, oh, I can't talk about that kind of thing, or, that's too woo-woo to go there. Let me ask you, when you started taking the hypnosis, when you started learning about it, did you notice anything improve with your health even then, or was it later on?
It's such a quick program, Marlene.
Okay.
I made a really close friend,
all right,
who is a brilliant man. He was also working in a helping healing profession, much more like alternative healthcare. And the two of us became an older gentleman, fast friends. And we would trade sessions because we were both much more interested in the spiritual hypnosis end of things. He was much more interested in shamanism and spirits and, mediumship and energy healing and just the unseen world. And so we had many, many hours of engaging conversations. And he actually gave me my first past life regression hypnosis experience. And that was mind-blowing because, again, coming in with very little exposure to the hypnosis world, I I didn't have an opinion one way or another about past life regression until I experienced it through him. And I realized, whoa, right? Like I'm actually doing what I was born to do. And for many, many lives, I've worked in the healing arts. And
Yes.
all of it, there were so many parallels that we dug up. We went back to Atlantis. In these visions and this past life regression, I lived in this structure in the middle of the ocean with columns. There were villagers who were, bringing their sick loved ones to me across the ocean. We were communicating through the dolphins. It sounds
Okay.
so bizarre and so surreal,
Right.
but they were left with me for days or weeks or even months until, and I would perform all of these ceremonies using, oils and scents and things from nature and lots of
Right.
prayers. And it was deep one-to-one work. And I realized after that past life regression session, oh my gosh. I mean, first of all, my house has similar columns.
Isn't that
Oh my
weird?
goodness. Because, we started working together a little bit more, even after I started bringing clients here. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, people are coming here. I'm doing this deep
Right.
one work. So I think the near-death experience definitely, I'm not sure. Oh, maybe here we are. Anyway, or perhaps it created within me, a sense of familiarity
Sure.
for the healing arts from past lives. So I wouldn't say necessarily the training, but definitely this deep soul friendship
Yes.
with this gentleman where we were able to, for months and months, trade sessions.
Exactly. And sometimes, that saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Where maybe if you would have met him
Yeah.
before, you would have been, oh, he's a nice man. But that's it. You know what I'm saying? So
Uh-huh.
sometimes you cross paths with a certain person at the timing is, everything. Timing, timing, timing. Um, so I want to know when you started getting, because here you, like you said, you're taking your course at the same time you're
Oops.
dealing with your health. Okay. When,
Mhm.
in what point was it after what? And I'm curious about this. Was it due to past life
Mhm.
regressions, or was it through other type of hypnosis that you started to see improvement in your
Uh,
health?
well, yeah, it's interesting, Marlene, because, as I recognized in working with clients that energies were coming through me and spirit
Mhm.
was inspiring me to ask, deeper questions, or was helping me focus our work in certain areas.
Right.
I started um, wondering, like, gosh, Amy, you really should get more training that would give you a stronger framework for understanding all of this incredible phenomenon. So I started to take classes in mediumship. I started to
Okay.
take advanced training in energy healing. And then I also went back and got a degree in metaphysics. And then, of
Okay.
course, like most students, you're like, wow, this is fascinating stuff. How am I going to integrate it? Well, I
Right.
started practicing a lot of these things in my life. For example, in metaphysics, a candle meditation
Mhm.
is one of the tools that I use to help my clients drop into a theta state. And in
Okay.
that theta state, Marlene, I can help them and learned how to help myself
Okay.
deactivate the primitive mind. That's the
Okay.
part of the mind that keeps us in fight or flight. right? The part
Mm-hmm.
of our mind that is resistant to change, that is playing and replaying old behaviors, old scripts, old
Mm-hmm.
ways of doing
Yes.
things. And at the same time, activate the higher mind, right?
Yes.
That higher mind that exists in all of us, that infinitely wise part of us where the answers lie,
Yes.
where we have this sort of calm confidence, this clear cognizance, this deep inner knowing that
Okay.
it's this path versus this one or this one. And so I started practicing a lot of these meditation tools. I
Okay.
started practicing more mediumship,
Okay.
where we call it sitting in the power, where I could connect with the spirit world, and the spirit world would give me amazing guidance,
Okay.
amazing tools that I could apply to my own life, or I could apply to my practice, or it would illuminate some topic or issue I was working on with one
Okay.
of my clients. And so, this healing, I call it, turning down the volume on the physical symptoms, right? In
Mm-hmm.
reality, if I went to the same doctors or different doctors, would they notice that, there's a change in because it is kind of a mystery illness, right? It's called myalgic encephalomyelitis. That's a mouthful.
Okay.
ME for short. It's inflammation of the brain and spinal cord.
Okay.
And the cells in my body don't produce a normal amount of energy. So people with
Okay.
my condition have chronic pain, chronic fatigue, inflammation. There's just dysautonomia. There's just a whole host of symptoms that,
Okay.
it runs through basically every system of the body. So my goal actually wasn't necessarily to heal it. It
Okay.
was learning the tools to turn down the volume enough so these physical symptoms would no longer be a distraction,
Okay.
and I would be able to function at the most optimal level. And it slowly unfolded, right?
Okay.
And some of these tools, Marlene, I have to use, they have to be woven into my lifestyle in order for them to
Yes.
work, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
Yes.
again, it's not a spontaneous healing. It is, it is a discipline that
Mm-hmm.
I have to practice,
Mm-hmm.
what I preach and what I teach in this space.
Exactly. Exactly. That it's not, it's like something almost like a habit and as certain things that
It
you
is,
do or don't,
yeah.
that the truth is, the reason why I ask you is because people
Mhm.
don't realize the power of the mind or how powerful the mind is over symptoms that are expressed through
Yes.
the body.
Yeah.
All right. That doesn't mean, I'm not saying that you might not have an organic disease. I'm not saying
Sure.
that. But
Oh,
there's signs that
yeah.
the symptoms are aggravated by what's going on up here.
Oh,
And
yes.
sometimes they're
Yeah.
even produced by what's going on up here. All right.
Yes.
Uh,
Agreed.
Especially when you sometimes even go to the doctor and they'll run tests on you and they kind of tell you, like, well, I really can't give you I know you're experiencing whatever your symptom is, but I can't come up with a diagnosis for
Yeah.
you. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to say all the
Yes.
time because sometimes it's what's up here that's going on. Even if you don't,
Yeah.
the person might not recognize it, but the subconscious mind,
Sure.
which is expressing itself. And sometimes it's stuff that sometimes, and I'm sure as a hypnotist, you've seen this stuff that people don't want to face or deal with. And at some
Sure.
point, it pops up and sometimes you see it expressed in the body somehow, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Marlene, a couple things. I do believe that some of us have, I have actually two rare conditions. And I do
Mhm.
believe some of us are ahead of medical science. That's a
Sure.
thing.
Yes.
Just this
Yes.
year, this condition, ME, has been classified as a genetic disorder.
Really?
Before
Okay.
this, I mean, in the very, very beginning, back in the 70s, right? It was dismissed. And so it took
Mm-hmm.
many, many years. It was only through the advent of long COVID where they started
Right.
to recognize that there's some overlap between those symptoms and,
Mm-hmm.
people walking around with this ME diagnosis. So, I mean, the good news about that, I mean, hopefully it'll happen in my lifetime, is that now they're starting to think of treatments. I mean,
Right.
this whole time I've had to educate all of my mainstream doctors on what this is, what to do. And they always wanted to call it fibromyalgia and stick me on
I was
those
about to
medications.
ask you that. I go, is this
Yeah,
similar to
it's not the
fibromyalgia?
same.
Okay.
It's not the
Yes.
same. I mean, again, like, there are some similarities and some parallels, but they're not the same conditions. So
Right.
they cannot be treated the same. But what I can say to what, you know, you were speaking about is absolutely the mind. Look, whether you have a known diagnosis or one of these mystery illnesses, whether you're using mainstream interventions or
Mm-hmm.
not, there is always more that we can do
Sure.
from a mental emotional standpoint. For
Yes.
me, and some of this, who knows, Marlene, could be intergenerational, things that
Yes.
are passed
Absolutely.
through the bloodline in
Yes.
utero. The
A
other
lot of people
piece,
have a hard time, by the way, believing what you just
yeah,
said, right? They
yeah.
think that
Oh,
we're just
sure they
individual.
do.
And I'm like,
Yeah,
no. I
yeah,
think that whether it's organic, like you said,
yeah,
intergeneration or genetic, all
yeah,
right, or spiritual,
yeah,
or that there's a connection, good and bad. How's this? Or good
yeah,
and
yeah,
yes,
yeah.
I believe
Well,
that.
in past lives, I've
Yes.
had incredible experiences with people who have come here, and they're like,
Mhm.
Amy, one example is this woman who came to me who had this face rash, and she's like, and she was in that, she was, I think she had studied exercise physiology. I mean, she had a
Right.
very, very, and such a clean eater. I mean, super granola. And, she'd been to Western medicine, she'd been to naturopaths to try to figure out this rash.
Right.
And in fact, she was on I interviewed her on a podcast, and
Mhm.
we did a past life regression on her, and spirit came through and shared with her that each and every time she speaks her truth to someone who is unaccepting, unkind, unwelcoming, she goes into a state of fight or flight, right? The adrenal
Wow. Yes.
glands, right, start
Yes.
pumping epinephrine,
Yeah, that cortisol starts
norepinephrine.
going. Yep.
Yes, and her face turns beet red, and it can
Wow.
last. It can
Yes.
last
Yes.
for days, and
Yes.
dermatologists couldn't figure it out,
Sure.
and
Of course. They're like,
she thought could be dietary, and then we
yes.
were able to piece it together, and then we were connecting the dots, and then she said, oh my gosh, Amy, I realized the rash happened. I was talking to my in-laws about something that I feel really passionate about, and I was feeling their um, distaste of what the topic we were talking about, or their
Mhm.
disbelief and my strong convictions. And so anyway, bam, she cured herself. No
Right.
rash anymore. Or if she has a rash, she realizes it's nothing serious. It's
Right.
just that she's responding
Yes.
to, and we think, if I remember the story, because I've been doing this a decade now, it did have to do with past lives, and um, being ridiculed and
Yes.
silenced for speaking
Yes.
her truth. So
Yes. Yes.
anyway, fascinating. I've got so many
Oh,
stories
yeah.
like,
And that's why I asked you, because
yeah.
sometimes I found that, not all the time, but sometimes reviewing a past life is almost like the linchpin
Mm-hmm,
that takes that's and sometimes they recognize it, they understand why they see that
mm-hmm,
past life, and then
mm-hmm,
other times they're like, okay, but then in a little while, like all of a sudden it catches up and something happens in your, whether you want to call it your subconscious mind, your understanding, the
Yep.
higher self, that
Yep.
they get it. And it
Uh-huh.
stops certain either certain behavior, like, or
Mhm.
fear or whatever. Like you're telling me here she's getting a break, she's
Yeah.
got physical symptoms. All
Yep.
right. So
Absolutely.
it's almost that past life that they might think something happens that now they understand what it is. It's like, that's not happening to me now. That happened way
Mhm.
back in the whatever
Mhm.
lifetime, maybe more
Yes.
than once. Like you said, where maybe I was punished for opening my
Yep.
big mouth.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
if people, yeah, you open your big mouth out, yeah, off with her head or some, I'm getting exaggerating here, but yes,
Absolutely. No,
yeah,
that's you're spot on. The other piece is, hypnosis is about helping clients resolve subconscious conflicts, right?
yeah,
The things that hover beneath the surface of their
yes,
awareness. However, the subconscious mind is where we create problems, but here's the kicker. The subconscious mind is also where we solve problems.
sure.
And so it's my job, I believe the answers lie within, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's less about what I'm doing to my clients or for my clients. It's more about what I'm empowering them to do for themselves. For example, one of my deep metaphysical questions that I ask my clients is, in what ways are you living in alignment with the higher self, with
Right,
the authentic self? And what ways are you not in alignment, right? Because the ways in which we're not living in alignment are causing triggers, emotional triggers. So I got news for you. If you've got autoimmune disease like I
mm-hmm.
do, or, chronic pain, or, just even, a sensitive digestive system,
Yes,
each and
yes,
every time you're making choices that go against the grain of what you
mm-hmm.
need or who you are, or you're ignoring your inner voice, it's triggering to the emotional body, and we can create all kinds
Yes,
of physical symptoms from that. So in this space, it is absolutely about identifying, root causes, but it's also about releasing them, and then piecing together a formula for life that resonates best with your soul, right?
right,
Where do we need to make some shifts and changes that are going to create more inner harmony, right? Physically, emotionally, cognitively, spiritually, etherically, such that the outer world doesn't trigger you as much.
right. Let me ask you, do you find
Mhm.
some of your clients sometimes, how's this? Logically or on a soul level, they think I need to make this change or whatever,
Mhm.
but they're kind of resistant to the change because I'm used to doing it this way. Like
Oh,
part of them recognizes I wanted,
yes.
like what you said, but they're like,
Yeah, yes.
yeah,
Absolutely, which is why you get somebody into a deeper theta state,
yeah,
right? Because then we can pass the part of the conscious mind, the critical factor that kicks out anything new,
right,
right? That is highly resistant to change. Once
yes,
we can slow down the brain waves, then the client is in a heightened state of receptivity,
sure,
right? For
right,
entertaining new ideas. Now, if hypnosis, in my opinion, is done well, you've already then identified, right, those subconscious conflicts. And
right,
you've
right,
already, in an awakened state, begun to piece together some of the solutions,
yes,
right? So then when you get somebody into the classic, because there's different kinds of hypnosis, a lot of people don't recognize. You can get a lot of work done before you put somebody in a deeper state. You put them in
sure,
a trance state and a fully awakened state,
yes,
right? When I put somebody into, or I coach them to bring themselves into a theta state, at that point, it is about releasing resistance,
yes,
lower frequency patterns, and recalibrating to a higher, calmer, more grounded frequency, right? That creates um, more balanced energies, right? That's in
mhm,
greater alignment with the most authentic version of themselves. because otherwise people are experiencing cognitive dissonance, right?
Right.
You know, they believe on one hand this is what they need, or this is what they believe, but on the other hand, this is how they're behaving. I want to lose
Sure,
weight,
exactly.
right? Or I want to quit smoking, but you know, I continue to walk into the lion's den at work, and I continue to expose myself to, you know, this kind of person or this kind of situation, and I continue to allow other people to speak over me or speak for me. Right. So it's never really about it. The interesting thing about hypnosis, it's never really about, you know, the smoking
Mm-hmm.
or the, you know, anxiety in traffic. There's always something, again, hovering beneath the surface of the awareness, something going on in the mind, right? A self-limiting belief or a self-sabotaging behavior,
Yes.
you know, in the background that's driving this too much behavior or driving this pattern that my client is ready to release and outgrow. So we have to get a better sense of what's going on in the lifestyle, habit wise, and pattern wise, to be able to snuff out that behavior that initially brought them through the door, if that makes sense.
Did you find that, let's use a smoker, where it becomes part of their identity? And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like you said, logically they understand, I want to stop smoking. This is bad for my health.
Mm-hmm.
Blah 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 blah. That in other words, they know that. I understand that. But part
Yeah.
of their identity, especially they started smoking when they were really young,
Yeah.
that there's also that they think, like, you know how people basically, eventually they were thrown out of the building. They had to smoke in the corner with the other smokers.
Completely.
Believe it or
Yep.
not, their smoking has a connection to happy social times. You know,
Totally. Totally.
it's like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
And you got to like convince them, no, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you don't have friends anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Because it's like, yeah, we used to stand out there and it was great. We used to like
Yeah.
talk, or if they were into a party or a club or a bar,
Yep.
and everybody, or after a meal, like they have a hard time thinking, if I don't smoke, for example, I'm
Yeah.
not going to have that other part anymore. And it's like,
Yeah.
you can, if
Yep.
you want to, you can still go out and have a drink or have
Yeah.
a nice dinner and not do the smoke part.
Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
think that everything goes out the window.
Yeah.
Because we have, especially good memories. Bad ones sometimes have a hook in us, but good memories also have this thing to beguile us, like,
Mm-hmm.
like the smoking or what came with it. Like, and so you're part of that club. How's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I think the spiritual hypnosis part of what I do is, you know, I try and inspire my clients to think about what they're adding to their life versus
Yes.
what they're removing from their life. You know, it's a perception thing.
Yes.
But also too, I have found, with a lot of times with smokers, or you know, anyone that fits under the I just call it too much
Mm-hmm.
behavior category, whether it's, you know, gambling or eating or, you know, overspending or whatever.
Right.
Oftentimes that particular group, and again, this is just my observation, because, you
Mm-hmm.
know, in the beginning of my journey, I worked with a lot of those people. Now I'm working with a totally different population,
Right.
of people working on corporate stress and major life transitions that are impacting work and vice versa.
Right.
But what I can tell you is oftentimes those people, there's a whole host of self-sabotaging behaviors they're
Yes.
engaging in. So a lot of smokers, you know, have issues with gambling.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of, you know, gamblers have issues with drinking, and so on and so
Yeah,
forth.
there's process addiction in the mix to go
Yeah,
along with, the other stuff. And yeah, and as a matter of fact, sometimes you hear that's why some addicts, I'm talking like, let's say drug addiction, you see, but they become
yeah,
smokers. Like, they get
yes,
like, okay, this is bad, but not as bad as what I was
yeah,
doing before.
completely.
Yeah.
Well,
And
and again, I mean, that's where tackling hypnosis from the resolving the subconscious conflicts come into play, because there's a deeper reason. There's something hovering beneath the surface of their awareness that is causing them to make less enlightened choices that are going to have a huge negative impact in the future. So trust me, Marlene, I really grill people before I start working with them, because I have to know.
There's
Yeah,
usually something that on the outside looks really simple.
yeah, yes,
Like you think,
yeah,
okay, I want to stop smoking. Let's go.
yep,
And sometimes there's more to, like, when you maybe talk to them or they talk about it
uh-huh,
or the behavior, that you're like,
yep,
okay, this
yep,
is just the outside of
uh-huh,
this whole thing. Let me ask you, since you said
yeah.
you were into alternative hypnosis, have you ever done anything with spirit attachment and hypnosis?
Oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
very, very interesting topic. Oh
Yes.
gosh, we could talk for eons
Yes.
about this type of stuff. Lots and lots of paranormal activity in my space. Good, high frequency things. But I
Okay.
can't tell you that over the years I've had. It's usually one of my adult clients who
Mm-hmm.
reaches out to me and says, "Hey, Amy, would you be open to seeing my child or my teenager?" And here's the
Mm-hmm.
story, because they have a comfortability with me. They know all the other things that I do in the area of energy healing and mediumship. And
Right.
I do clearings of homes, and and I
Mm-hmm.
have for years. But yes, I can tell you of one situation where I think she was maybe 11 or 12, and the mother called
Okay.
me. We'd been working together for a while, and actually, I had worked with several members of the family on grief and loss.
Okay.
Actually, two of the brothers in the family had died within a short period of time.
Wow.
One to drug overdose, accidental drug overdose, and the
Okay.
other to, it was suicide. And they
Okay.
were adoptive kids. And at any rate, so we worked through the grief process, but I can't remember exactly the timeline. I think it was about like 6 months to a year later, the mom called me back and said, Amy, my daughter's having some really bizarre things going on. She feels like there is an energy that's following her to school, that's talking to her, that's getting
Oh,
inside of her head. And also, by the way, Amy, there's some really bizarre things going on in my home. My daughter's electric toothbrush went off. Just like, and things are moving in our space. We're hearing
right.
footsteps and doors slamming, and temperature changes, and on and on and on. And I said, well, and she goes, Amy, you've met my daughter briefly. I don't believe this is a psychiatric issue. In every other way, she's always been just such a normal kid and does well in school, is super compliant, but she's so anxious. And for whatever reason, this voice it's following her everywhere. It's bugging her at night at bedtime, and it's following her to school. And she hears it a lot in the bathroom when she's alone. And I'm like, bring her in, bring her in. So Marlene, what I recognized in putting her in my chair, guiding her into theta, is
Mm-hmm.
that the spirit of her deceased brother had attached to her.
Here we go. Oh,
Yeah.
because I was about to say the brothers
Yes.
that you spoke about were her siblings, her older siblings,
Yes.
I take it. Okay.
Well, and so they were adoptive. The
Right. No,
mother,
but
sure, but yes, they were both older brothers. She was very
right. The
close to
relationship was
them.
like a sibling relationship,
A
kind of.
sibling relationship.
Yeah.
And the brother who had attached to her
Mm-hmm.
was the brother involved in the accidental overdose.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right.
this was a soul who wasn't ready to die.
Okay.
In my sense, was he wasn't ready to die. And she's a little light worker, just as cheery and beautiful as
Right.
ever, very peaceful, very spiritual. And
Mm-hmm.
this really shook her up. I mean, she could not function. So I put her in my chair and spirit walked me. Of course, I work with a spirit team, a spirit
Okay.
guide. There's somebody helping me through this process. And I drop her into, a theta state. And
Okay.
Marlene, it was so surreal. The little girl and the mother was in the other room. I left the door open. I told the mother she could come around anytime. And
Right.
the young girl was very comfortable with me because we had spent a lot of time together, working through grief and loss. And, we were just very close. So at any rate, she goes into this theta state and spirit says, Amy, take her deeper, because in
Okay.
order to attach this spirit, we need you to take her more into delta, more into the sleep state. So I take her down a little bit deeper. And again, spirit's walking me through all of this. And the little girl's eyes are closed, but I could see rapid eye movement. Like she's with me and she's not with me. And a little bit of her body tremoring. And this was the first time, this was quite some time ago, that I had experienced this kind of this intense phenomenon. So this is happening. I'm guiding her through. I'm seeing her body jolt a little bit. I'm feeling like spirit is helping me detach and remove this energy. And lo and behold, this is taking 20 minutes, 30 minutes. This is really taking some time. I hear her take a deep breath in and then out. It was almost like something was almost being like suctioned out of her. It was pretty dramatic. And actually, I have to say, my heart was kind of pounding a little bit because I had never had a situation up until then, Marlene, where when I was talking to my client, she was so deep that she wasn't responding.
Right. When they get even that voice that they hardly talk, that they're so low spoken because they're so deep.
Exactly. Yeah. However, at the same time, my spirit team was like, she's not in distress. She's very safe. When we bring her up, Amy, she will have no unpleasant memories of what happened. And she will be very calm. And that will be the last episode she'll ever experience. And so I bring her back up and sit her back up. She was in a reclining position. I am wondering what her mom is. Her mother doesn't come in, but she's, listening to this.
Right.
And I sit her up in the chair, and first thing she says is, you took me to a very pink room. And it was soft, and it was fluffy, and it was happy. And I was floating, and I was suspended above the air.
Okay.
And I was sleeping, and I felt safe, and I was comfortable. And that's about as descriptive as she got. And she said, I asked her a few questions, but I didn't want to over process with her because that I had taken her very, very deep. And people can be a little disoriented for a while. And I didn't want to, I didn't want to push. And so, she took her a little while to get kind of, reoriented back in her body. Walked her out to the main area in my space. She hugged her mom. She hugged me. She told us both she feels better and was really, really calm. And then, like every client I work with on this type of work, I told the mom, I said, I'm going to follow up with you in a few days and then a few more days. I usually follow up several times.
Right.
And and it was gone. It was gone. No more voices. The only other thing that I did, Marlene, is I visited the home of that client, and I did a very, very thorough clearing. And the paranormal phenomenon disappeared. It went away.
Right.
So,
Which was, like you said, it was that
Yeah.
But see, sometimes people don't realize also that you can get an attachment. Sometimes, yes, the
Mhm.
circumstances that you describe, but
Mhm.
sometimes people will get an attachment,
Mhm.
especially when you were saying that thing about the grief,
Mhm.
where, depending on the relationship, of course, well, they'll say, oh, referring to the person that just passed, oh, don't
Mhm.
leave me, don't go
Yeah.
away, stay here with
Yeah.
me. And
Completely.
sometimes
Yeah.
it actually happens where you get, and people will say when they're in pain, people say things, not
Sure.
realizing
Sure.
that let's say in the case of a widow and a husband dies,
Mhm.
where the husband might stay behind thinking, oh my God,
Yeah.
she's so full of grief, she won't be able to operate.
Completely.
And then later on, in other words, there's no malicious anything, not like
Sure.
malevolence
Absolutely.
or anything. And
Yeah.
then later on, once he's enmeshed in her aura, and of course, like they say, time heals all pain.
Mhm.
As she moves forward with her life, then you get the women. I'm using this example of a woman that's left a
Sure.
widow. She'll say
Mhm.
like, I sometimes feel so and so around,
Mhm.
or I feel his presence, like what this girl was describing. Um, like in other words, now that she's ready to move on with her life, she doesn't realize that she's got the attachment of her
Yeah.
ex-husband that she
Mhm.
wanted, that she asked him to
Yeah.
stay.
Completely.
And that
Completely.
that then it's like, yeah, but or they'll say, I'm ready to move on, but I find like that my grief, I'm not getting beyond, again, that logic versus what's
Yeah.
actually the feeling. And is because that
Com
attachment is still there, not letting her move forward with
Oh,
with
true.
whatever the grief process is.
Yeah. Yeah. And in
Uh,
this case, I mean, I don't think, the spirit wasn't trying to hurt her, wasn't
right, right,
malicious.
right.
The spirit
Yes.
was trying to have life, to
No,
be
no, no. Yes.
remembered, to be present. But I've absolutely, when I work with parents who have lost a
Mhm.
child traumatically, I usually recommend that they wait about, 6 weeks to 8 weeks before they come and see me, because
Sure.
there's so much that they need to work through,
Yes.
and they're not necessarily ready for, because some of the work that I do, I can help my clients, depending where they are in the grief process, be able to experience the presence of their loved one as if it's happening now. In other words, smell them, feel them,
Right.
hear them, see them in their mind's eye in a very real way. Um, but I mean, that I believe can only be accomplished once. It doesn't mean that the client is, completely through the grief process,
Sure.
but there's a stronger sense of peace that that loved one on the other side is in a safe place.
Which is what worries
And
a lot of people for some reason. They worry about that.
absolutely, the top thing people want to talk about is like, Amy, are they okay? And then, again, with some reassurance, then they can have, that experience of that deep connection with the loved one. And for a lot of my clients, that gives them permission now. Like, it's one thing for me to tell them their loved one is safe. It's another thing for their loved one to come directly to them and say, I'm safe. I'm good. It's okay. Keep going forward. Your work on earth isn't done. I need
Right,
to take
right.
care of our grandchildren or whatever it is. And that a lot of times can catapult my clients ahead in the grief process, because now, because there's a lot of guilt. It's like, could I have done more? How could I ever be happy again? Like we had a whole future planned. But when the loved one is able to come in directly
Exactly.
and just say, I'm fine, I need you to be fine,
Exactly.
then
Like
then the
like
healing
they
can
go
really,
of that guilt, like you don't, it's okay for you to continue living.
yeah,
How's that?
yes, exactly. It's okay. I give you permission. We had a great life together. And where I am okay. And that's such a beautiful feeling and message and experience to help facilitate for my
A lot
client.
of people have a hard time, the guilt, I think, especially like what you were saying
Mm,
about,
yes.
when it's fresh, okay, like they feel guilty, like, am I betraying this person, or am I gonna forget them? Or yeah, I mean,
Completely.
people think some crazy thoughts. And
Yep.
you know what? When you said that thing about this young lady, one of the things that when especially when you're talking an attachment of
Mhm.
where there was addiction, that people don't realize that, especially an addict, whether he's
Mhm.
aware that he's dead or not, because maybe he
Mhm.
died he was in, under this the effects of drugs.
Mhm.
One thing you don't have when you're dead is senses. So sometimes the attachment,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
want to take over the senses of the
Yeah.
living person. They don't
Completely.
have a
Yeah.
physical body anymore.
That's
So the
right.
next best thing is that living person to be able to
Yeah.
experience what they can't, no matter what.
Yes.
And what drives their behavior, I know people are saying, "But
Yes.
you're dead, how can you?" What drives their behavior is, of course, something as strong as an addiction,
Right.
right? And they need to, and in this case, maybe the closest thing here is a pubescent girl that was a sibling that lived in the same household. You name
Mhm.
it, it's there.
Yep.
Um,
Exactly right. Uh-huh.
and that can happen. Now,
Mhm.
and something else I wanted to ask you. The other day I was reading this article. We were talking about grief, and now you know that they're coming up with these grief apps
Mhm.
where people can pre-record. And I'm thinking
Mhm.
this has got either this I can imagine work if somebody that you know that will be passing away. I don't
Mhm.
know, but they'll pre-record, or the AI can take a sample of somebody's voice and
Mhm.
recreate messages. And there was one
Mhm.
where the AI generated grandmother, I guess, who's passed on, is reading stories to her grand. And part of me was
Mhm.
like, I don't know how I feel about that, because I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
grief, it's a horrible thing when you're in the middle of it, but it's the human condition. You see what
Yeah.
I'm saying?
Completely. Like
And
we're
I'm thinking,
meddling with something. Yeah.
right, and I can
Yeah.
see where somebody will get so caught up with one of these grief apps.
Mhm.
Um, like there was one where the guy who invented one of these applications, his mom passed away, and he
Mhm.
took enough. I guess she was ill. He took samples of her voice where she leaves him voicemails. So basically, even though this lady has passed away, he gets her voicemails and hears her voice. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know. I could
How does
see
that
where it
help?
could,
Yeah.
yeah. And to me, I could see where it's like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
somehow I could see some personalities, them getting stuck in grief or not dealing with the
Oh,
grief.
completely. How do you get, I mean, I'm not suggesting that we get over, the
No, no,
loss of
no,
a
no,
loved one, right?
no.
It leaves a hole in our heart, but at some
Yes,
point, right? At some point, we have to learn to manage our lives
yes,
without them in physical form, which includes
sure.
the voice and all the things we can, um, you know, we can connect with them through meditation and hear them clairaudiently. We are all mediumistic in nature.
Right.
Um, and to me, that seems like a healthier way because it's happening organically.
Yes, yes,
And the message is timely and poignant. And sometimes, for those who aren't as clairaudient, we can connect, our loved ones can connect to us clairsentiently, like sending, emotions or sensations through us that just, you know, let us know that they're here. And I
mhm,
think those quieter forms of connecting are a lot more healing,
yes.
um, than the use of technology. But that's just
Yes.
my
No,
my
I feel that I'm like, no, I don't know. To me, it was like I could see more problems with this than solutions, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Where
Yeah.
it's just I think that humans are very vulnerable when they're
Hmm.
grieving,
Sure.
and
Sure.
it could, for some people, maybe they'll use it very
Yeah.
little and then just go. But I could see where in other circumstances it
Yeah.
could become a problem.
Yeah.
Um, especially again, people don't realize. that as far as the attachments and
Yeah.
what happens during that process. Luckily, this family, when this was happening to this young lady, they knew about you.
Hmm.
In other
Oh,
words,
yes.
because
Right.
chances
Absolutely.
are she might have
Yeah.
ended up going for mental health. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Oh, completely. I usually get those situations where,
Yes.
it's an attachment, somebody hears about me, or grief and loss, but the kind of grief and loss where you can connect somebody with a loved one, um, or people who have had experience connecting with aliens,
Yes.
and or UFOs, and they'll contact me, and they'll be and they're beautiful souls, and mainstream work and normal in every way, and they're like, please tell me, like, is everything I'm telling you confidential? I'm like, absolutely it is.
Yes, I know.
Right? Because they're like,
They're
you
like,
know
they're
me,
worried, like, please.
and I work in this profession, I can't. And I'm like, it's
Yeah,
solid.
there's ethics
You're
involved.
fine. I am that person that people
Yes.
can
Yeah.
confide in, and it's just, it's a very privileged role,
Let
and
me
I feel
ask you, have you regressed to anybody, an abductee, and found that they've uncovered memories of abductions, of ET
Oh,
abductions?
yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes. Even recently. Yeah. And
Okay.
I've had, it's really interesting, because of all the years that I've done the work that I've done, my connection really was strong with the spirit world. But then I started to understand I have these orbs or light beings in my space. They've been here
Mhm.
forever. You can turn on the
Mhm.
video of your phone and just see them. They fly out of me and all around me. And if I get a group of people together who are high frequency,
Right.
we can create these orb storms. But fairly recently, within the last like 2 months or so,
Mhm.
I was contacted by, I just call it, it was an interplanetary connection, and that
Okay.
was pretty wild. So I think it's becoming more and more prevalent, and less like, as it's not as startling, and people really are coming out of the closet, so to speak, to say, yes, I saw a UFO, or I do believe that I've been contacted by
Okay.
extraterrestrials or higher intelligence, or something that is not of this universe or galaxy. And so, and that's great. And a lot of times these are light workers, and I do believe that these beings have chosen them. um,
Okay. Right.
and
Like it's the right person. It's not gonna be like,
absolutely. So these aren't, it's been my experience personally, and then, as a hypnotist, the energies that are connected with my clients haven't been dark energies.
okay.
They've been, very, very high frequency beings. Do other dark energies exist? Yes.
Mhm.
But I just personally haven't, other than these, and again, one could argue these attachments, are they dark? And in these cases, no. But I have colleagues in the field who work with dark energies, and if
Yeah.
someone comes to me and it's very clear that's what they're dealing with, bloop, I just I refer
Well,
them
you know
out.
what? They
Yeah,
have, if you ever have this, there's a
yeah,
lady, she was great. She was a doctor. Her
yeah,
name was Ireland Frey,
yeah,
Louise. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but what she did was she was doing hypnosis. She was a doctor. She got
yeah,
into hypnosis, but again, not because she was going to do regression. She was
yeah,
going in there for the benefits of hypnosis, relaxation, etc. At
yeah.
some point, she got into the spirit attachment. What she was doing is she had a nurse who
Hmm.
was a medium.
Hmm.
So this medium, the nurse would sit in with her sessions and was able to channel the attachment.
Yeah,
It's really interesting. It's a different
yeah,
way of identifying the attachment,
yep.
you know, um, versus, sometimes you're not sure. It was like, wow. But again, coming from a person who's an MD, like that when they start out, they don't that's not what they're looking to do. As a matter of fact, they're very skeptical about
Yeah.
hypnosis or spirit
Yeah.
attachment. And people, for those who remember Dr. Brian Weiss, who came out in the 80s
Yeah.
with that was like way back then.
Yes.
What was it? Marlene. I hate it when
Oh gosh, I know. I read that so long
Brian L.
ago.
Weiss. Man, it's something
Yeah.
that I know what this is. Why don't? Well, anyway, he was a psychiatrist down in South Florida,
Yeah.
and he was strictly like medical, like science. He had no. And when he started doing that regression, many lives, many masters. Yes, Marlene,
Yes,
finally.
and life between
Right.
lives. Yeah.
That
Okay.
when he started getting into it, and like you said, he started with age regression, and then he did, which skipped into past life. And even then, he was thinking her imagination. I'll just let her go. Let her run with it.
Completely.
That's when he realized that there was more to it, especially when we're talking the past life regression and things of that nature, than what he. And how's this? I believe it more from when people start out as hardcore skeptic science, kind of like standing.
Yeah.
That they it's inevitable that this is where they end up at.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
That's how they for my podcast listeners, Amy, where can they find you at? What's your website?
Well, thank you. Yeah, sensoriumhypnosis.com.
Okay.
That's the best place to find me. They can connect with my blogs. I do write lots of spiritual blogs. They can connect with my latest book, Whispers Beyond the Veil, Channel Teaching Inspired by the Spirit World. They can find my social media links, including YouTube.
Here, let me see if I can.
Yeah, so that's the best, easiest place for them to
Here
find.
we go. Let me see if I can bring your website here into the. There you go. Here you go. This is your website, and this is the book that you just wrote. Okay, Whispers Beyond the Veil.
Yeah.
Channel trackings. Okay, by Spirit World. Exactly. All right, and this is. I know, because you know what? Yes, you can use hypnosis to stop smoking, and yes, you can use it for overeating or stuff like that. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, it was funny because when you said that, I would have clients that would come to me for like smoking cessation or stuff like that. And once they kind of trust you a little bit better, then they come back and they say, well, Marlene, there's something that I want to talk to you about. I did it because that trust was there. Like, because normally I don't think they would have talked about it. But since they kind of, like you said, that your confidentiality's there, plus that you're not going to go, what? And then they'll talk about things, and they'll say, and especially if the hypnosis worked for them for, let's say, to stop smoking, all of a sudden they're like, well, this and this, whether, and it's something that people don't realize, what you mentioned a little bit earlier about people that have anxiety because of they get stuck in traffic. People don't know about that thing. People think of anxiety like, afraid of flying, and there's afraid of getting in the elevator. I had a lot of clients with that, but people don't realize that some people, they get, let's say, in a traffic jam, and they're like, maybe on a highway where they just can't get off. This puts them in a high state of anxiety.
Yeah, completely.
It could be as simple as something like that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Most people, as of late, who come to see me are amidst their own either major life transition or they've had a spiritual awakening.
Yes.
And they're wanting to do a deep dive, to figure out, like, why is my soul here? What is my true calling? What do I need to release, and how do I recalibrate? Yes. So, because it just intuitively feels like the life I'm living is beneath my full potentiality. And so now I just want to do a deep dive and do some self-healing work. And so.
And sometimes, believe it or not, healing is letting go of things.
Yeah.
letting
It
go of
is.
hurts.
Yep.
And sometimes it's like last time I checked, time travel is not possible. But if you're
Yeah.
going to live the rest of your life in the shadow of this event,
Yeah.
then it's always you. There's a point where you have to like let go, and sometimes the hypnosis helps with that. How can I tell? Even whether it's an understanding at a soul level, how's
Hmm.
that?
Yeah. Yeah.
That maybe they could logic it. Yes, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. But it's not down in the soul level.
Yeah.
So
Completely.
so they still have that, even if that event took place many, many years before.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I tell everybody, your perception is your reality. That person might tell you about that event, and you're like, "Whoa, what's the big deal?" But
Yeah.
depending that person, everybody's different to that. Maybe what happened, like you
Hmm.
said, is monumental or is very impactful because every
Complete.
personality is different.
Yes.
Introverts, extroverts,
Yep.
that kind of deal. Uh, so yeah, that's one of the things. It's not a one size fit all as far as hypnosis.
Completely.
That people don't realize that um, that there's sometimes and sometimes it's not significant. Sometimes it's
Hmm.
a small thing, but there's like what you call the burr under the saddle kind of deal.
Hmm.
The bird's really small, but
Hmm.
until you get it out of there, it's
Mm.
so
Yeah.
yeah. That sometimes that's
Oh.
what you need to get that to, like you said, like when you get into the deeper subconscious mind,
Hmm.
and you drop that critical factor.
Hmm.
That's when people start like you know processing, for lack of a better
Hmm.
word.
Yeah.
Um, Again, Amy, has been absolutely wonderful to
Oh.
talk to you. It's been great. Um, yeah, people don't understand. People sometimes there's a misconception about the benefits of hypnosis or what happens when they're hypnotized,
Yeah.
or that they're gonna forget, or like that they're gonna wake up and go, "What did I say?" It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. No,
Yeah.
no.
Completely.
You're there. You're aware of everything. As a matter of fact, you're just very relaxed, but you're not gonna forget or not
Yeah.
know
Completely.
what's going
Completely.
on with you every moment. Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
Oh, Marlene, thank you so much for having me. I really
No, no,
appreciate it. And I
the
loved
best.
your conversation.
Yes, I
Thank you.
loved it too. Thank you so much and take care.
Okay, you too.
I
Thank you.
wish you the best of luck in everything.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Wow. See, I could talk shop with her and talk shop and talk shop. Here, I'll show you my since I don't actually do hypnosis, the because you can't spread the butter that thing. All right. This is my actual website now. All right. And which is hypnosis-diy.com. What I have here is I have a lot of self-hypnosis products. Okay. And if you go there, you're going to see that I've got links where you could get these recordings. Okay, that's me at a radio show. This is from what year? I can't remember. I was doing a radio interview. That's me with dark hair. Live in the moment. Yeah, that was one thing, by the way. That's why I put that there, just with my windswept look. But yes, that's something that you learn, that you sometimes with clients, where you got to live in the moment. And by this, I meant both ways. It's like where people can't let go of the past. Okay, and people don't understand when you say let go of the past. I'm not saying forget it, don't remember it, or whatever, but stop living in the shadow of it, especially if it was something bad, which unfortunately, that's usually what stays fresh with us. And also living in the moment is the people that they don't enjoy the moment because they're planning the next 5 minutes, the next 5 hours, the next 5 days, blah, 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 blah. And the moment escapes them. And it's like live in the moment. That's me running when I used to jog a lot. I used to do a lot of 5Ks. And yeah, and I've got some of my recordings are on there, but see, if you look down at for the people that are looking at the video, you can see that I have a lot of hypnosis downloads. There's a lot of them here. Improve your parenting skills, achieve your goals, get powerfully motivated, relax deeply now, hypnosis for pregnancy. Yes, just go to hypnosis-diy.com. And one of the things, this one, I have it there where I was being interviewed, and I hypnotized the guy. I hypnotized him in his studio. He was in another state. And he fell asleep. I mean, he started snoring. And I get this panicked, this panicked phone call, or was it a message from his engineer who's in, that does the back, who was in another state going, oh, what do I do? What do we do? I was like, no, don't worry. He will wake up by himself. Because he just went, he was out of there. So if you ever go to, yeah.
I'm just so fascinated.
I can get him to the point where, let me see. Anyway, let me see. Hold on. I got him. Let me see if this is on here. Hold on. Version, I don't know. I can't remember if this clip has it, but yeah. So yeah, what she is talking about, all right. And people say, well, why do you, doesn't hypnosis do the trick? And yes, it does. Let's say for smoking cessation. But the truth is that we get bombarded so much with, we get so much messaging. That's the word I'm going to use. Everybody's heard of subliminal stuff, but there's subliminal doesn't necessarily mean, how that they would say, oh, they would put hidden images in film or anything like. Subliminal sometimes is just the beat of the music they're using, the wording. In other words, we're getting messaged, of course, as consumers. God knows, and us, we're Americans, we're consumers, to behave, to become attracted to certain things, to buy certain things, to equate happiness with owning a certain whatever, it's fill in the dot, or look a certain way. So we get continuously bombarded with certain images. And sometimes that's why that self-hypnosis, that especially if you have a weak area, to listen and like put everything back. Like when I used to work with my clients, I would give them like a 10-minute, I would record it, hypnosis, MP3. And I listened to it now, and it was like the audio quality was not that good and whatever, but that's fine, because believe it or not, you realize that actually works great. And I would tell people, because basically sometimes it would just help them go to sleep, get into REM sleep when they fell asleep. People don't realize how important REM sleep is. And they would tell me, Marlene, can I keep using the recording? I was like, of course. They were like, man, I've been sleeping so well when I listened to that recording you gave me before I go to sleep, that I've been having the best sleep of my life. Like, I'm really sleeping. I go deep. And I go, yeah, that's the whole idea. Because you can be asleep, but that doesn't mean it's the best sleep you could have. And we need that. And sometimes it's caused by different things. It could be anxiety. It could just be your personality. You could be hypervigilant for a number of reasons. And the same thing, the even when we were talking about with Amy, like self-image, sometimes the hypnosis works with how hard are you on yourself? And let me explain. You can want to, how is this? You can try to, let's say, have better eating habits for your health. Okay. But you can't be so unhappy at yourself that you're miserable. As a matter of fact, even though the dynamics of people that are bulimic is much more complicated than that. People don't realize how complicated it is. That it's a process. Okay, that even if you say, you know what, I want to make better food choices, or I realize I got to be more active, that along the journey, because truthfully speaking, that in other words, that you want it to stick, as far as if you're going to lose X amount of weight, and you got to be realistic about that. It might take a year, it might take 2 years. What are you going to do? You got to be happy with yourself every day along the way, as in living in the moment. And unfortunately, sometimes we get bombarded with these messages that if you don't look a certain way or dress a certain way, that you can't be happy. It's like, no, you can't be happy unless it's, come on. So sometimes the hypnosis or the listening to some of them recalibrates you to realize, you know what? I can be happy. I can be content. I'm in the process of it, you know. I'm working on it. But in the meantime, because that's what happens a lot of times with people say, you know what, when I get that certain car, when I have that certain job, or when I have that certain husband or wife or girlfriend or whatever, I have that house, or I live in that part of town, then I will be happy. And they come and they get it at some point, and it's like, okay, where's the big, yeah, but you lost, depending also how long it takes you to acquire that. It's not. And I'm going to use one of those 1980s, it's not the destination, but the journey. You know, when the 1980s, they used to have a lot of the win-win, all that crap. God, believe me, I used to work in a corporate area where they used to have those framed and hanging in the hallways. But believe it or not, it's true, though. It's accurate. It's accurate. It's accurate. You have to be content or reaching towards happiness every day as you go in that journey. You'd be surprised also. You might initially have thought, that's where I want to end up at. And you would probably think, you know, like, hey, that's it. No, by the way, having a certain vision of something you want to acquire or attain, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely not. But sometimes that vision is a product of what we've been indoctrinated to think. Hey, that dog, you know, that certain look or that car or that, if that's what you want. But sometimes it's like, is that really you? So sometimes along the way, you realize when you start being that more honest with yourself, or contentment with yourself as you go along the way on that traveling, whatever you're doing. Okay, living life, but maybe saying, I want this to happen, want to acquire this, or maybe I'm studying because whatever. There's something about it where you start becoming more honest with yourself about what really makes you happy. And by this one, people say happy. Yeah, I'm talking, yes, there's happiness. Like you have moments of happiness and there's moments of contentment, but you become more honest about really what fulfills you. And it might be, it's either going to cement that belief that I know definitely is a direction I want to go to, or you're going to say, you know what? I thought that whatever that is, that's what I really thought. But I'm thinking that's not really. I realized that that's not going to do it for me, or maybe that wasn't what I wanted. Because maybe I'm getting to know myself a little bit better. Again, people sometimes think that this moment of self, knowledge, this epiphany is like, a clap of thunder. I know now what I want to do or what I want to. No. Sometimes it's a process. It's a process of realizing what really makes you happy. All right. Getting to know yourself a little bit better. And of course, being honest with yourself, but just realizing, yeah, no, that's not what I thought. Or yeah, definitely. I realize more than ever that is definitely what I want to acquire. Whether it's a field you want to go into, again, it could be anything. It could, but again, it always boils down to, is that what you really want? Or is that something that you were indoctrinated into believing that's what you want? Or that's what's good for you? Or your problems will be solved when that happens, or when you're there, when, the big question mark. Because we have several of those things, by the way. And you hear this sometimes even from people that go into certain fields when they're young and they study certain, either because they're told or their family, or there's a family history or expectations. And some of them early on, they kind of not thrilled with it. And some of them, yeah. And then later on they find out, man, that really wasn't me. Man. But, either they don't want to disappoint their families or themselves, or they've been told, you know what, the only way you're going to be considered successful is if you do that. All right. Again, some people, and sometimes it doesn't have to be as major as what's the purpose of my life kind of deal. It doesn't have to be that. Maybe something more minor. The thing is, that thing of living life in the present moment, being honest with yourself and dealing with disappointment and anxiety, anxious moments, because I think that's what she was talking about, where people react because they're trying to escape anxiety. And sometimes it usually comes at a very young age. Something happened and they shut down to deal with anxiety. And then they get to the point that later on in life, when something anxious happens, and I know that there's some things that are more severe than other, some even go to the point of disassociating, or they distract themselves with other things in order not to feel the anxiety. They overeat, they gamble, they take drugs, they shoplift, they overspend. I mean, a host of different behaviors that really, at the end of the day, what it does is to distract from the anxiety. That to take you away from there. Take me away, Calgon. And before you know it, they don't want to experience any anxiety. None. Like whenever they see an anxious moment, and the truth is that we can deal with it. Yes, there's going to be anxious moments where you're like, I'm sweating bullets. Oh my God. And my heart is like, and you're going to peak. And then guess what? If you hold tight, you're going to calm down. And you might get that cortisol. That's a very bad feeling. And you don't like it. But then you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Huh? Let me tell you something. I remember sometimes when I was working in the corporate world, if I had one of those stress, I would sometimes go, I would, and what is it? When the going gets tough, the tough go shopping. Shopping for me was not necessarily even buying stuff. I would spend like a couple of hours and I would just go look at stuff. I hardly ever bought anything. Okay. And then that couple of hours, this is what I'm talking about. Distraction up to a certain point is not a bad thing. Okay. And when I come back, it's like, okay, I'm over that. And I look at things and it's like, I'm not looking at it. I'm not telescoping on it from an anxious point of view. It was like, oh, that happened. Wow. All right, how I'm going to handle it, or what am I going to do? In other words, you calm down. What I'm saying is we can handle anxiety. All right, we can. But some people, they get to the point, especially like I said, if they had really bad experiences and they have this learned behavior and then getting into the hypnosis where basically we're retraining our brain not to behave a certain way and not wanting, because we're very resistant to change. Like I said, logically, you could say, you know what? I don't want to behave this way. I don't want to overeat, or I don't want to smoke, or whatever the case might be. I know that. I understand that logically. I know that. That's my objective. But somehow, and by the way, which we didn't get into it with Amy, which the subconscious is very sneaky. Sometimes you can say, I don't want to do that. I think that's better. And somehow or other, the subconscious makes it, because pain and pleasure. Pain is the unknown. Pleasure is the known. What you know, whether it's your surroundings, your behavior, this is what's known. I might not like it, but I know what it is. The unknown is new behaviors, new customs, new habits. You want to stay away from the pain of the unknown. So the subconscious mind is going to trick you into everything. You'd be surprised what your subconscious mind can come with it, to trick you into staying where you're at in a certain behavior of what you know. And it takes a lot of willpower. And by the way, once you break out, don't think your subconscious, it'll keep trying to drag you back in. And I tell everybody, I used to happen. I would have women, because it was usually women, who would come in to lose weight. They, healthy, and some of the things, this is the way your subconscious mind works. To you, you're thinking, okay, I want to lose weight because Health-wise, I know it's not good for me. Plus, I want to get back into my jeans. I want to do this. Like, man, I used to wear that, and now 2 years later, I can't wear it or whatever. All right. Your subconscious mind in the back is saying, well, you know that if you lose weight, all that clothing you got, you're not going to wear that anymore. You're going to have to throw that away or give it away. And all that stuff that you bought, bye-bye. And how's that going to affect your relationship? Or what if, and let's say for somebody that maybe's been overweight most of their life, and maybe they, you know what, you might, again, you might start getting guys to look at you. How are you going to handle it when they come up and they want to know you? And what if you come across a jerk? This is the way your subconscious works. It puts all the negatives that could come about because of what you want to achieve. Something as simple as weight loss turns into like, holy crap. So of course, you start off like, hey, I'm going to the gym and I'm going to start this diet, or I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, or and then you start, because your subconscious mind is like, no, 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 no. Yeah, you can lose weight, but this could happen and this could happen and this could happen. Of course, they're all negative. And that could happen. And then what are you going to do? What if you meet some guy? Or how's it going to affect? What if you're in a already relationship? How's it going to affect that? Do you really, some guy comes up to you and he says something to you, and then how are you going to handle that? And blah, blah, blah. I mean, your subconscious, remember, it works. It knows you. It's you. Knows what you don't want to hear about. All right. And, or maybe you've hung out with friends who look down. Oh yeah, now she lost weight. She thinks she's better than everybody, and they're saying, no, now you're going to be the one. In other words, all the negative connotations or the result of you losing weight. So that's why people sometimes, despite their best intentions, it's because your subconscious mind is telling you it's the apocalypse of your life, which will come about after that. Same thing with the stop smoking. Their identity's tied to the smoking. If you were a smoker, you hung out there with other smokers and you had some great times, great stories. You went to a bar. If you had a party, you had a smoke. If you had a great meal, you had a smoke. And besides the thing that it calms you down, though, let go of that cigarette. It's like, that's my identity, man. When I think of myself in my head, I see myself with a cigarette in my fingers. You're telling me you're stripping away my identity? Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that goes on in people's head, like something as simple as stopping smoking. And there's other stuff. But anyway, guys, I hope you like this interview with Amy Marohn. Fascinating subject. Check out our website. I'll have a link in the credits of the show. Or you can go to mine if you want to do a DIY. I can't stress enough how much programming we get from all ends. TV, podcasts, everything, billboards, you name it. We're constantly getting all these messages, driving whatever behavior that person wants. All right. And sometimes they're just, and we're not wanting to get too technical about this, where basically you have to lock your subconscious mind like that. Only negative stuff bounces off, positive goes in. Right? This was part of my blah 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 when I was hypnotizing my clients, which was to lock that door of their subconscious mind so that only positive information, positive images would go into the subconscious mind. No negative, it would bounce off. We would do towards the closing of the session, where I would ask them to imagine a big thick door. And I would say, do you see that key in your hand? And they would say, yes. And I said, I want you to turn the key in that lock of that door. I say, I want you to turn it 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And I go, is it locked? I go, yeah. And I would say, you know what that means? The door to your subconscious mind is locked. Only positive information and images are allowed. If it's negative, it's just going to bounce off that thick door. By the way, this is people imagining whatever the thick door was to them, that they understood that made sense. Okay, was the thick door, because, but yeah. So anyway, guys, sign up for my newsletter on Substack. Go to MiamiGhostChronicles.com. Go to MPPellicer.com. You find links to everything. And then, of course, go to hypnosis-diy.com for the hypnosis products. We've got a lot of interesting shows coming up. Let me know if you would like to see more of this stuff along, whether it's hypnosis or behavior or spirituality, even though it's a paranormal. But I'm not talking about ghost hunting. I'm talking about spirituality and integration with medicine, which is what I was telling her. How, by the way, there are certain illnesses that, yes, hypnosis will help you to relax you, but it's not a question of your mind. There's something organically that you need to address with a doctor. But the other side of that is that sometimes we express certain things in our bodies. Sometimes it's trauma that we don't want to acknowledge or deal with. Could be a host of things. And it's like, when then something, you keep stuffing it down. And so by the time it erupts in your body through some type of symptom. Part of when she was describing that client, she had that outbreak, that rash outbreak. And it took her maybe a while to realize that what was causing it was when she wasn't talking or expressing herself or disagreeing. How's that? Because, by the way, some people think, I'm not going to go off on somebody and tell them. Oh, sometimes it's as simple as being able to say, you know what? That's interesting, but I don't agree with you. That's it. I don't agree with you. Not a bad thing. Makes life more interesting. If everybody agreed, it'd be boring. All right. So but what I'm saying is, if somebody, and usually I would say somebody that has that type of physical symptoms, is that they were, for lack of a better word, they were punished for speaking their mind. They were punished or made to feel or embarrassed or humiliated. And it's there. The desire was there. It never went away. And it wasn't like one time. Something where, and sometimes, for lack of a better word, that desire to express your feelings is more, it becomes so overpowering just because you've been told not to. All right. Again, and sometimes I could do a show about this, where we had what they call body syndromes, where sometimes people would get unexplained pains in their arms, for example. And this, of course, is with no known medical origin or injury or prior injury or anything like that. And sometimes what was happening is this person was trying to reach out and better themselves or acquire something, go in a new direction, a new career or something. And believe it or not, that fear, again, the subconscious mind that doesn't want you to do anything new, it would express itself in pain. Depends. Sometimes the legs is moving forward in your life, in the arms. I mean, I could get into that, but anyway, I will be back soon with you guys. Thank you for being part of my audience. You are all wonderful. 2026 is upon us, so interesting year, no doubt. Till next time, take care. You're all wonderful.